I was a collegiate wrestling coach for many years. I was a head Division III coach, and now I'm at Beat the Streets, the largest wrestling club in America, as the assistant wrestling coordinator. But no, this is not the opinions of Beat the Streets. These are the opinions of Ben Rosen.
Okay, perfect. So we got Ben Rosen, and you have an incredible Substack. Your Substack is awesome. Do you want to tell the people a little bit about your Substack, Push Pull Grappling, and how that started? Because that's how I found you. I saw it through Facebook and saw the articles, and I was like, these are awesome. These are really good stuff. And yeah, jump in and tell us what started that. How long you've been doing it?
Yeah, so I've been doing this since 2020, off and on. It started as I take a lot of notes and I have a lot of philosophies and thoughts about how to do things kind of on a meta level, on how we coach, how we wrestle, how we train, how we recruit, how we kind of do everything in the wrestling coaching universe. And I wanted a place to put that all down. And then that started as, I think my first article was, considering why we listen to music in the wrestling room, or how much we should talk in the corner. And then kind of as I have developed and changed, it's kind of turned more into this kind of talking through this kind of games-based approach, which is All My Mind, which I learned through kind of my CLA mentor, Greg Stodders from Standard Jiu-Jitsu, has kind of brought this quite old approach from team sports to grappling. So I've worked with him really closely as he's been kind of the tip of the spear on how to do this in grappling, because it's very different than other team sports. It's simpler in other team sports. In grappling, it's a very different thing. So what that actually looks like in wrestling or jiu-jitsu or whatever those grappling sports are, those one-on-one combat sports, it changes. It makes it meaningfully different. So finding a way to translate that from the team sports, it's been kind of translated to jiu-jitsu, and now translating that to wrestling has kind of been my angle, and it's ruffled some feathers. I mean, we have a lot of tradition in wrestling of how we do things, and this definitely questions those norms and why we do things. So that's kind of where I've come from.
Well, what I think is really cool about what you've been doing, and like just you talking about it right then, about how you're looking at even what should we listen to music in the corner, or in practice, not in the corner, in practice, that completely shifts the way we look at every single component of what we do. And I feel like where other sports thrive is like, let's give, some of our biggest, biggest resource sports an example. They're looking at every single little piece and they're like, is it really effective? Is it really effective? Whereas wrestling, we tend to lean on. But what have we been doing for so long? Because we're really scared to interrupt that, because we almost, and I think every sport does have a little bit of a, fear, a superstition, but wrestling has some big superstitions. So I think that people really want to know, why are you such a hater on stance in motion?
Haters, a little bit of a aggressive touch to it. With that said, I don't do stance in motion anymore. The reason to me is kind of going back is not why am I a hater, but what is stance in motion meant to do? What are we trying to do in a wrestling room holistically? And then where is stance in motion? What is that piece? And what is it trying to do? What is it trying to train? And is that the best methodology? Is that the best method? The question to me is, with stance in motion and wrestling in general, we're trying to do a certain thing when we coach wrestling. What are those things? And then with stance in motion, what is it trying to train? And is it the best method to do that? So if you say that if stance in motion is for strengthening your legs, is it the best way to strengthen your legs? If you're saying it's for timing, is it the best thing for timing? Not that it is wrong, but we have a limited amount of time with our athletes. And I And I think saying that stance and motion is the best or is amazing begs the question, what is it the best for? And that's kind of where I have a tendency to push back and think that there are other methods to do the things that we're doing that would be more effective. So I guess that would be my question to you is, Catherine, what do you think the general body of people, of wrestling coaches, think that stance and motion is training? What are we teaching? What is the purpose of stance and motion kind of holistically?
Okay, I'm going to go through some of the things I know people were asking. So one person said stance and motion is like practicing your dribbling in basketball. How do you answer that?
Okay, I think this is a great place to start. And it's almost at the foundation of the CLA approach. So you want to dribble, you want to teach someone how to dribble a basketball. You want to teach them how to dribble well. So in my mind, there are two ways that you could teach someone to dribble a basketball. One, they could dribble with the defender in front of them with a goal that is meaningful to them. Let's say the goal is, I want to get to the basket. That's the goal. I need to drive to the basket. Okay? If that's why we dribble, should we work with the defender in front of us that is forcing us to make decisions? Or should we dribble around cones? And to me, what stance and motion is it's more akin to dribbling around cones. And you dribble around cones, you might be working going left to right. The problem with going around cones left to right is number one, you're looking at the cone. The cone doesn't move. The cone isn't the person, isn't what you're trying to defeat. You're trying to defeat the person. So your eyes are on the cone. I think every basketball coach would say when you dribble, you want your eyes up. You want to be looking at the floor. You want to be looking at your defender. And that defender is the thing that makes you decide whether you go left or right. Just going right hard to the basket is a skill, but it is not the hard skill. The hard skill is, should I go right or should I go left? And that decision is based on the things that your defender is giving to you. Is he leaning right? What's his stance look like? Where are his eyes? We are perceiving all sorts of cues through your opponent that is the thing that makes you make a decision. Mm-hmm. So when we do stance and motion, we're doing it on, there are a couple ways to do stance and motion, right? I think some of the most common ways, and I think one of the most broken ways, is your coach blowing a whistle saying shot, saying sprawl, saying down block. The hard part of shooting and sprawling is not the act of shooting and sprawling, though that is challenging. The hard part is, should I shoot or should I down block? And that perception is lost when you are not with a human being who are giving you those cues. The other way would be to visualize it, and that's better. But again, your visualization is not reality. And every person that you step across the line from has different cues that they're going to give you that make you perceive what you're going to do. Is their stance high? Is their stance low and ready to shoot? Is their stance high and ready to sprawl? What are the things that they are giving you in order to make that decision? So to me, when you say that it's like dribbling a basketball, I'd say, well, if you want to train to dribble a basketball well, I think the big part is with your opponents. That is the important part. And when you decouple the person and the perception that they have, you are not training as ideally the thing that you want to train. And that's a big part of it. Is the problem I have with stance of motion is decoupling your opponent and what you see and the cues that you get from that person, from your opponent, to the decision of what I want to do. And that to me is at the core of the problem with stance and motion.
I think everything you're saying took me right back to being at, world team trials, senior nationals, whatever we would do for, maybe our group Olympic Training Center, like group warm-ups, and we'd be doing stance in motion. And I can just feel that same sensation of having a false perception of how good I feel in the warm-up. Because I'm doing stance in motion, I feel really good. And I'm like, wow, I'm on top of it. I'm on top of it. But you're exactly right. I am not on top of it because I'm doing some sort of perception. I'm on top of it because I have a false sense of I can move really fast and I don't have sharp judgment. It feels like I'm going to get all these shots today, but I'm not actually basing that on because I'm accurately lining up with what's in front of me, right? It's because I'm just doing it for conditioning, right? I'm just doing it as the warm up, which I think is the next like number one question was, well, we do it for conditioning. And also, and this is my own question, is how do we teach some of that? Because I'm actually really big into like rhythmic patterning. Like I think rhythm and being able to have rhythm. And I also am really big into regressing a position in order to actually learn the position, and then you bring the person back in. So when you're kind of like doing things on your own, which parents are asking all the time for, right? Doing something on your own, using stance as conditioning, and then also trying to regress it for our youth kids. Because I don't really use stance in motion either for my higher level. And I rarely use it for the youngest, but I also see the benefit of getting a rhythm and a pattern and understanding. And I actually use stance in motion with like a ball and some different I build other things like you're talking about, so we can improve our stance and improve our reaction time, first of all. But yeah, with that youth and the patterning, doing it on your own conditioning, that's a lot of things at once. But
Yeah, so I think this goes down to like you're doing stance in motion to train maybe making sure you're low enough, your stance is low enough. But when you are alone, how do you know that your stance is low enough? How do you know that it's not too low? How do you know you're in the right position? You might think it, your coach might say it, but what needs to happen is you need to understand, you need to have the consequence of, oh, my stance is too high, I'm open for a shot. My stance is too low, I'm open to a snap down. So I can do stance in motion all day and I can think my stance is so wonderful and so great. But then I go out there in the exact same stance and someone out there who is fast and quick and strong blasts me with the double leg. And wait a second, was it low enough? And without coupling it with someone who is reasonably trying to attack you or trying to do something to you in a wrestling context, I don't think you can train that. I don't think you have any perception of whether that is right or wrong or what you need to adjust. And again, when you decouple the person from it, you lose that sense of why I'm doing this and that sense of immediate consequence. Whether, again, I remember I had a coach. His name was Charlie Falk. He was a starting 125 pounder at the University of Iowa. We would spar all the time, and he would never say a word. And he wasn't particularly offensive. He just kind of let me shoot on him, and he would counter and blah 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 blah. But every once in a while, without saying a word, he would blast double leg. It felt like out of nowhere. And what I learned over time was, oh, that is just him telling me, hey, your stance is too high.
mm-hmm.
But if you try to do that in stance in motion, there's no one there to blast double leg. So how would you know? And that to me is really at the core of the problem, is how do you know that your stance is in a good position? And then it also goes back to when you take a shot, how do you know the shot was good? Because the hard part of the shot is not heel toe knee. The hard part is when this guy puts his weight on you, can you explode through him? Can you get through him? And when you take the person out of it, you have no opportunity to perceive that. And that to me is really at the core of the problem.
So what do you think is the best way on your own at home? What's your go-to if a kid wants to be like, I got to work on my stance of motion or on my stance specifically?
So if I want to know, again, stance in motion to me has a couple different components.
Mm-hmm.
There is timing, there is strength, and there is conditioning. So there's the timing and the wrestling sense of, am I in the right position? And are the things that I do in stance and motion, down blocking, sprawling, shooting, faking, whatever, are they in good timing? Two, conditioning. Can I hold my stance for a long time? Can I get into my lungs? And can I build that cardiovascular endurance in a way that is wrestling oriented? And then there's like strength. Can I literally hold a stance for an extended period of time? Now, if you want to do strength work, do strength work. I don't think trying to plug in some like semblance of wrestling into strength work is going to help you. If you want to build your leg strength, do squats. If you want to build your ability to hold your stance for a long time, do isometric hold. That's fine. And I think that's really reasonable. If you want to do conditioning, I think it's relatively reasonable to do conditioning as long as your BPM is high enough, as long as your heart rate is high enough. But again, I would argue probably there's better ways to build your conditioning. Now, if you want to build timing, I think without a partner, it's really, really tough. And I think it truly is one of the hardest things of wrestling is it is going to be very hard to build wrestling skills without having an opponent, without having someone out there to perceive, am I too high? Am I too low? Should I shoot? Should I not? Should I, where should my hands be? Where should my legs be? Those things. Now, if you really don't have it, if you really just absolutely don't have a person, it needs to be visualization. You have to see it. You have to see what you're looking at. Obviously, your mind is never going to be like the person across from you, and it's going to be really hard to see different people with different things. So what I would try to tell you to do is don't get in a rut when you do stance and motion visually of looking at the same person. Try to put Jordan Burroughs out there. Okay, then try to put Spencer Lee in front of you. Okay, then try to put someone tall and lanky. Put these different styles and see if you can visualize the differences. But what that's going to require is a lot of film review to see, so your brain is primed to actually know what those people will look like. But again, I think you are at a huge loss because one, you can't actually do it that well. And two, you're not wrestling Jordan Burroughs. Most of kids are wrestling kids their age and their strength, and those constraints that they have are very different. Training against Jordan Burroughs is great, but you don't wrestle Jordan Burroughs. You need to wrestle the people you wrestle, and the people who are competitive with you. So I think it's really hard. If you wanna build wrestling skills, you need to wrestle. If you want to build strength, do strength. If you want to do conditioning, do conditioning. But I don't think stance has to cover all those things, and I think it does a really poor job of doing all three when you can attack each individually in much more effective ways.
I agree with that. That is so that is the basis of, I think, where I even started with some of this conversation, because it started with me talking about the things I do that are nothing to do with stance and motion that build my stance. And it was the very things that I did, that strengthening legs, strengthening hips, and not even in the weight room, because I don't think that me just loading up the bar, and I did a lot of back squats, that actually really didn't effectively move the needle on my stance work. When I did like isometric holds, and I did way more deep squats and all those things, way more effective. Lateral walking, really low. Those move the needle on my stance work. And so the conversation was, well, just do stance and motion instead of those things. But you're bringing up exactly what I think is a powerful thing, that you have to actually, you're talking about being more intentional. If there's one piece here, your whole kids are struggling with stance and getting low, then they need to build the strength and the holds and all those things. If they're trying, the visualization part, I think, is really interesting. I think it's really powerful. You have to be super intentional. And when you're on your own, you can really build your kind of your visual cue and your reaction for like defense. You can really work on like how to quickly react and start, instead of being frozen when someone fakes on you, you can build those things, and you can build like some quick down block reactions. It's much harder to build timing, like when you're going forward. I mean, even defensive timing for reattacks is hard. So the big question is, if you don't do stance in motion, I mean, I think you're kind of cueing us into what you already do. What do you do instead?
So I think you need to piece apart. So in general, you need to wrestle, but you need to create situations in which you're training the things you want to train. So for stance in motion, what are some of the things that we're trying to train? What are some of the things we're trying to figure out? I'll just take one example. So I think one of the things with stance in motion you're trying to do is build that timing of, maybe down block fake one way, go the other, this type of like true wrestling timing. The hard part, the great thing about stance in motion is that it's no contact. You're not going to hurt yourself. You're not heavily wrestling. And that's really great. So how do we do something like that? If you want to learn those things, but don't want to have high impact. So we play games. So one of the games we play, it's really simple. We just call it the knee touch game. And you're trying to, the goal of the game, the winning condition is you get a grip of the back of their knee. This is to emulate, hey, I kind of got to your leg. Your leg was too forward. I timed it right. I got to it. We want to keep this in the stance in motion framework. So it's not a hand fighting game. It's more of a timing thing. So what we'll do is we'll have two guys. The goal is to touch the back of the knee. You cannot hand fight. You can do a little head patting, a little bit of this, but we're not hand fighting. You also can't touch your knee because the moment you start shooting from range, you are training more of a down blocking type of situation. So all this is two guys standing in front of each other, trying to get behind that knee. And what you will see emerge very naturally is you can't just attack the lead knee over and over again. They know it's coming. So you got to fake one way and go the other. And then meanwhile, your opponent knows that you're faking and is trying to time that fake to get to it when you do fake. So all of a sudden, you have this kind of meta game playing that is very realistic for wrestling. You are training something that if you got a hand on that knee, you would just drop in and slide in on the leg. And there you go. You figured out your timing. But if you are, but it also forces you to not be overzealous, forces you to be in good positioning because you can get captured on the other side. There's almost no space in wrestling in which one person is doing all the work. The other person has to do something, and that play is the thing you're trying to train. So that's one for timing. You want to do down blocking. You want to do sprawling. A simple game we play is one person is on offense, one person's on defense. The defensive person, their only goal, don't let them get to your legs. Offensive person, get a lock on the leg. No ties, because it's a pure down blocking. We're trying to train down blocking. We're trying to get your head and your hands in the way of their shot. You know they're coming. Mm-hmm. So they can do whatever they want. They can fake, they can move, they can do whatever. But eventually they have to shoot. And if they get to your leg, they win. If they don't get to your leg, you win. What you will naturally see without teaching it, you don't have to explicitly say, get your head and hands in the way. Mm-hmm. They will get their head and hands in the way because it's the only way to win. It's the only strategy that is actually effective. And what that does in tandem, aside from just building your down blocking skills, but it shows that these kids can find their own ways to doing things. So whether that is both hands down, whether that's moving with your cross hand or your lead leg, it's being aware that they're going to fake and try to misdirect and do these things, because no one in a match is just going to say, hey, here I come, here comes the double leg. No, they're going to try to trick you. They're going to try to figure that. And the moment you decouple that in stance in motion to, you know what they're doing because you're telling yourself what they're doing because you're visualizing it, you've lost the plot, because every sprawl and every down block is going to be a little different. And there is no perfect down block or sprawl that's going to be the same every single time. So those are two that I do. But it really depends on, again, what are you trying to train? If you're trying to train having a strong shot, that's going to be a different thing. And you can bring them together in certain ways, but it's really dependent on what is your intention as a coach. What are you trying to teach? And how are you allowing your kids to learn that themselves? Because you can't program into their brain how to do something the exact way that they need to, because again, their opponents are different, they're different, their body shape, their size, all these things, all these variables are changing and are different in every moment. So there is no perfect way to do it. They got to figure it out for themselves.
So a message to coaches across the country who are using stance and motion daily in their wrestling rooms, who are using it for conditioning, who use it at the beginning for warm up or at the end or whatever. And they feel like, it's kind of that, it's like that nice little sign off on the they've had, right? You're asking them to be more intentional about what they're doing it for and why. So what would you tell them? What's the message you would have if they were like, okay, I'm stepping into my practice tonight and I'm going to cut it out, but how do I reframe it? Give them a reframe. If you have a final kind of way to sum it up.
Yeah, the reframe would be is what do you want your kids to learn? What do you want them to figure out? What do you want them to solve? What problem are you trying to get them to solve? We want problem solvers. We don't want robots. We want kids who can work in all sorts of variable situations and do the thing that you need them to do. So if you want to teach them to down block well, put them in a realistic situation in which they need to down block well. If you want to make sure that their stance is the right length, is the right height, make sure you put them in a position in which they are punished for their stance being too high and they're punished for their stance being too low. So they can find their little Goldilocks zone depending on who they're wrestling. Because a heavyweight stance is going to be higher naturally and a lightweight stance is going to be lower naturally. If you try to tell them all that your hand on the mat is the perfect place to be, you are missing the fact that not every situation is like that. So what do you want them to learn? What problem are they solving? And how can you put them in a position that they can solve that problem over and over and over again under different variables and different conditions so that they can figure that thing out on their own?
That's powerful. The robots. The robot comment, that's big. That's really big.
Yeah, I just think that so many people think that there is this perfect way of doing something.
Yes.
And there just isn't. There isn't in any single sport. It's never been that way. There is no perfect double leg. There is no perfect position. It is all contingent on the situation that you're in. Watch a marathon runner. People say like, this is how you run. This is like, I think running is such a great example of this because running is a one-person thing, right? There is no opponent. So theoretically, right, there should be a right way to do it. But when you watch a marathon run, if you watch marathoners run the highest level, they strike their foot at each person's different. Whether they're mid-striking or they're toe-striking, where their weight is, it's different because their biomechanics are different. Their heights are different. Everything of their limb, everything is different. So they have to find their way. But the ultimate idea is that they need to get across the finish line first, as opposed to looking at it as this is the way you need to do something. Think about it as what is the result you want and how can we get kids to find solutions that effectively get them to solve the problem in whatever way works. Because to be honest, if you win a state title and you pin them, I don't care what you do because it works. And it might be suboptimal in the moment, but when there's a new problem, if these kids are able to problem solve on their own, they will find a new solution that fits for their new situation. But if they think that their head needs to be in the perfect spot every single time, when they do it and it doesn't work and their head isn't in that spot, if their brains aren't able to problem solve they're going to be stuck there frozen and unable to adapt to what comes next. And I think that is the problem, is we need to make sure these kids are adapting. And when we sit there and freeze them every 5 seconds because their elbow position isn't exactly the way I think it should be, that's a problem, because there is no perfect elbow position. There is no perfect double leg. Every double leg looks different, and it's contingent on every other thing. There are certain things that remain true that we want to train. We don't want their head to go on the mat when they double leg. That's not a winning solution. But then if you want their head to be up on a double leg, put them in a position where their head being up on a double leg is the way to win and is the way that causes success, without telling them this is exactly how you need to do it.
That completely combats the perfect practice method, right?
There's no such thing.
There truly is no such thing. And the athletes that kind of struggle with my methodology the most are the ones who want me to give them a perfect answer. They're like, but coach, like, I was taught that it has to be perfectly like this. And I'm like, could be at one point. And then the next time it might shift. Like, we're trying to just keep the same basis. We're trying to keep the same principles, like you're saying, the things. I love the way you said that, like the recipe for success. So that's powerful. Well, I'm excited for us to keep this going and keep this conversation going. But I think that the people need to hear that part for sure, and hear about.
Happy to have a part 2 with all the next comments, with all the next things that are problems. But I really would invite the people that you are saying this, the people that are really critical, to think of why I'm doing this. And I think if the answer is because my coach did it, or John Smith said we should do stance and motion, or this is the way you do things, maybe it's time to reconsider, and just not even reconsider, just consider why you want to do this thing. And is it the best way to get the thing that you want? And maybe it is. But if you've never thought about why, you're just going through the motions, because the best people in the world, they're problem solvers. They find a way to make it work for their guys and their situation, and every situation is different.
And we love John. We love John Smith.
Of course.
We're evolving past. And I think John is not asking for us to like stay put where we are. He's like evolve past. Like, what's the next thing? Because that's all he had available to him. People are bringing up, do 20 minutes of stance and motion after. Okay, I've been the person doing those things as well. All right, like everybody wants the recipe, and the best thing that showed up to me, or the best, kind of like advice I heard, was if there was a perfect method, like you're saying, if there's a perfect way to train exact this, someone would have the book and everyone would read the book. But there's thousands of books on all these different topics, because we have to experiment. And the biggest thing is, can you be the most adaptable in the moment, and can you train that?
Totally agree. Can you be adaptable? Can you find solutions in varying situations, as not only the situation itself changes, but the meta changes? There's different attacks, there's different positions, there's different things that people are doing. And if you are stuck with things that you've done since 1990, well, believe it or not, the sport has evolved, and you need to evolve too. And if you get stuck there without even considering alternatives, I think you've done a disservice to your athletes.
That's a perfect place to end. I love it. Okay, cool. Coach Rosen, that was amazing. Let's follow up with the part 2. I'm going to throw this up on the internets for the world.